Sunil Raj, alias Sunil Nambu, the name by which he is better known, first brought in Mattancherry, his animation film, in a short format in Riyas Komu's curation, The Sea is a Boiling Vessel, that was held during the time of the previous Biennale. That's when I first saw it. And it was not like anything that I've seen before of that resembles an animated film, neither in form or content. Um, Leaving behind a corporate career as an engineer, eventually Sunil Nambu, for his own satisfaction, had to move into creative pastures, and that is how he taught himself animation. So we had a full length screening of a 30-minute version of Matancheri in the hall here at the Kerala Museum, and it was introduced by Riyas Komu and had also besides Sunil Nambu, we also had Tom Emerty on board, and it was an interesting and fruitful kind of a discussion. And Metancherry is unusual for the way it brings in the real and the unreal in a very understated kind of a way, and Sunil Nambu himself is the main protagonist. And we also had Biju Ibrahim on the podium with us, because Biju Ibrahim, one of the other participants in Kaboom, was also, since he was a character in it, he was also on the podium to comment about his experience. So it was about the meeting of Nambu with Ibrahim, and Ibrahim, knowing Matancheri a little better, takes him on a walk. But Nambu has his own conversations, even as the character, with not only the seen world but also the unseen one, because he wears these pair of special glasses and he actually can converse with other spirits that reside in an old colonial town like Mattancheri, like Vasco da Gama and Cristiano Ronaldo enter into conversation in his Mattancheri. And you also find there are also people who walk on the road, which you begin to understand are not real, but they are spooks. Then there are references which can be understood only by people who have visited the Biennale several times and who carry those images along with them. There are images from various artworks in the Biennale and attendant shows, like there is Krishna Kumar's, the fisherman who rolls his eyes, in a passing glance at Nambu. There is the lady the artist from Finland, I forget her name, who made this absolutely, ravishing work, where she's on a tread cycle all the time and gives us a hilarious but scathing critique of what happens in her country, Finland. And these characters are also introduced in, as well as a ghostly a female figure who sings an old song about love and carries Nambu through pouring rain. There is also the ubiquitous, all-knowing auto rickshaw driver who talks about the history of Matancheri as his own family history. And these are actually characters we encounter there on an everyday basis. So it's a film that makes you understand what creative freedom is all about. How many things that we thought, were just passing thoughts in our mind, are actually can be elevated to the level of art and can actually engage people with its extremely wacky and really meta kind of a discourse. So Matancheri that way was a very intriguing viewing.
For the audience to understand, maybe a little bit more of the whole animation film, I think it's the reason Sunil Nambu's Biju is one of the most integral narrative in the film. To speak about that, I'll go back to 2016, when after the second editions of the Biennale happened in Kochi. I think most of you must have seen it, and the first edition of the Biennale, which was almost like a kind of a foundation for maybe a post-biennial discourse in subcontinent, and also the way it became a catalyst and a transformative agent in bringing new narratives, through art making, the way one looked at history of the region, excavation as a meta. So I think in that context, I think the first edition of the biennial spoke stories about Kochi or about Muziris or about Kerala or about our own, history of political action or social action and many, many, many things. Our maritime histories and narratives and, our trade histories, religions, histories of proselytization, colonialism, and that was the biennial which gave, I think, through the curation, the three, a post-Renaissance history narrative, the Portuguese, Dutch, and the British. And those performances which occurred in Kochi has actually created a residue. Fort Kochi, Mattancheri is all the residue of a certain kind of colonial performances which happened. That's the project Biju Ibrahim, through his research, which started for 3 months and ended up after us. I think that archiving that's different communities who are living together in Kochi in a 3-kilometer square. I think there is the smell of that research project in this film. It comes through the way Sunil Nambu edits it and narrates. But what happens after the first edition, the second edition, I'm talking about the biennial, it becomes a story from Kochi. One should understand the difference between about and, so when somebody is talking about the ideas of art making. The reason I'm saying Kochi immediately got confidence also by taking a lot of energy from the recognition that art making in Kochi was kind of recognized as maybe in a post-independent India, the maximum amount of international art practice art was produced in Kochi. So you also see the reflection of that, a certain kind of a confidence in speaking a new language about colonial history, introducing a local auto rickshaw driver with a certain kind of a subtlety, somebody who also resembles one of our favorite actors. And there are a certain kind of a narrative. So I would say that this particular work, before going into maybe further details, I would say that it's one of the maybe an interesting animation work produced by somebody came from, a very different historic background, an engineer turned, an animation filmmaker, and he also carries a certain kind of a sense of wit and a humor and a very different kind of high intellectual, capacity to kind of negotiate through, and that is very much seen in, I would say, the way the film is edited. So I've seen many of his works before this. So we decided, to bring into the context of See a Boiling Vessel, which was an exhibition happened in 2022 in Kochi, which was a continuation of Uru Art Harbor, which was a post-biennial thought, which looked at Matancheri as a settlement, which was triggering the new discourses. So Sunil Nambu's entry into See a Boiling Vessel as an artist is also, thought through by the Curatorial 3 team to bring in a very subtle narrative, which also becomes like, a new way of creating a metascape. So the way he transforms Mattancherry in, it was also something through maybe after 4 editions of the biennial, Kochi was getting matured more and more in telling its own stories in a very different way. So And we were very privileged, I mean, to work with Sunil, because when you see the film, the best things which I enjoyed in the work was like the way the lines comes into the film, which actually carries a loaded history of like, I mean, even Kerala's, art narratives, the way Kerala's art history is known through the lines and illustrations and also how technology changed the way one is using animation film without much of labor, but using the idea of thinking without using much of like the labor of making. I mean, so it's a very interesting kind of a narrative which layers into it. And that was also one of the arguments that which we wanted as curators that Sunil might be able to bring in. So once you talk about the lines, then another thing which I understood, which we celebrated in the work, was that the way he has edited it, because there's very certain kind of idea or understanding about periods. The way, I mean, when the memory of emergency comes in as a kind of a dark, memory into the film from nowhere, the way Nambu brings back like the memories of Amma Aryan, the film, John Abraham's, the way that film. So it's very, very the whole, narrative has, been kind of played into this. So, yeah, I think that's the introduction I can give, the way the formal structure, because I still feel that, and also Nambu also agrees that it is an incomplete work. I think it is a work in progress. I think Kochi always been an incomplete space. Matancheri is a place where most of the people live as tenants. Nobody owns anything. It's a kind of a social space which is in circulation, lives in the shadows of grey history. So it's like I think everything has come together in the work. That's the fascinating aspect according to me. So I'll just share this as an introductory remark to trigger more conversations. Thank you.
This is your first attempt at...
Yeah, in this scale, we did earlier with Riyas, and Riyas is a person who brought me, when I was working in the corporate environment, I wanted to come to, art, there was a drive, and Riyas is a person who gave me confidence, brought it here. So we worked earlier a few projects where it was a Gandhi Ambedkar cricket series. It was around 8-minute series, so it was a plain animation. Then I thought I'll get more into animation to understand more than in animations. I started getting into some more details. So then when this opportunity came, and it was it was a trip where I didn't know what to do. I wasn't staying in Mattancherry, just looking at roaming around with Biju, and Biju was telling many historic background, which I was picking whatever I wanted, because it's not like Riyas told, something like wit, which I was always following. So, and it was, I think, it was done in 3 episodes actually. If you see, my 3 stays in 3 episodes. Like first time it was football. So when the World Cup happens, like Mattancherry, I saw a different Mattancherry with football. It was a World Cup, and Cristiano Ronaldo had a bad time, and then connecting that to the past. And then next time it was actually then I came back, then it was moral understanding about, then the rickshaw driver came. So it's like, then finally after editing, like when Riyas told, it's not incomplete, it's not complete, it is ongoing. So I decided to stop it because somewhere it has to be stopped. So the thing is that it's a narration where, suppose like a traveler comes to Mattancherry during Biennale time. He has a friend who knows about everything about this place, and he goes to Biennale, and then there's a rickshaw talks to a rickshaw driver. He explains about the story, and then he sees Biennale, and then he has some experience with, and he goes back. So that's a simple, it can happen to any visitor, 3-4 days visitor, so it's a place where, it's a narration. Finally, it came.
Narration is, yes, certainly it's a part of life there. I grew up in Fort Cochin too, and this whole stretch to Kalbati. So this particular friend is Biju Ibrahim. Biju, could you just talk about your journeys in Mattancherry, about which also Riyas mentioned, and which has been a pretty intensive one, I guess.
2017 ഞാൻ മട്ടാഞ്ചേരിയിൽ റിയാസ്ക ഇൻവൈറ്റ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് അവിടെ എത്തുന്നത്. അത് എൻ്റെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ ഒരു ഷിഫ്റ്റായിരുന്നു ആ ഒരു മീറ്റിംഗ്. ഞാൻ ആദ്യം മുമ്പ് പ്രോജക്റ്റുകൾ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിലും തിരുവണ്ണാമലയും ഒക്കെ ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഒരു അടയാളപ്പെടുത്തുന്ന രീതിയിൽ എന്നെ തന്നെ അഡ്രസ്സ് ചെയ്യുന്ന, എന്നോട് ഞാൻ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട് എന്ന് ജീവിതത്തിൽ തോന്നി തുടങ്ങിയ ദിവസങ്ങളായിരുന്നു മട്ടാഞ്ചേരിയുടെ ലൈഫ് എന്നെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് ആ ഒരു 3 വർഷം. അത് എല്ലാ തരത്തിലും ഒരു ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റിക്കലി, ഫിനാൻഷ്യലി ഒക്കെ റെസ്പെക്റ്റീവ്ലി ആണ് ഒരു ആർട്ട് ഹാർബറും റിയാസ് കോമു ക്യൂറേറ്റ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള സെറൻഡിപ്പിറ്റിയിലും എല്ലാത്തിനും എന്നെ സ്വീകരിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളത്. അതിൻ്റെ കൂടെ തന്നെ മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് എന്നെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് ഇപ്പോഴും വിട്ടുമാറാത്ത ഒരു റിഫ്ലക്ഷൻസ് മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി തുടർച്ചയായിട്ട് വന്നുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അത് മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി പ്രോജക്റ്റ് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് അത് പിന്നീട് ഡോക്യുമെൻ്ററി, അത് പിന്നീട് ഞാനൊരു ക്യാരക്ടറായിട്ട് മാറുന്നു. പിന്നീട് മട്ടാഞ്ചേരിയുടെ ആർക്കിടെക്ചറിൽ വീണ്ടും അതിലേക്ക് തന്നെ വീണ്ടും തിരിച്ചു വരുന്നു. അപ്പം സത്യത്തിൽ ഞാൻ പോകുന്ന പിന്നീട് ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള പ്രൊജക്റ്റ് എല്ലാം മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി പ്രൊജക്റ്റിൻ്റെ റിഫ്ലക്ഷൻസ് ആണ്. എൻ്റെ ഉള്ളിലുള്ള അന്വേഷണങ്ങളൊക്കെ അന്ന് ജീവിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു യാത്രയുടെ ഭാഗമായിട്ടാണ് ഇപ്പം ഇവോൾവിംഗ്ലി ഞാൻ തന്നെ മാറുന്നത് ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അന്ന് 2017 ഞാൻ എത്തിയിട്ടുള്ള ബിജു ഇബ്രാഹിമും ഇപ്പം നിൽക്കുന്ന ബിജു ഇബ്രാഹിമും തമ്മിലുള്ള ഒരു ദൂരമുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ആ ദൂരത്തിൽ ഞാൻ മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി എന്ന എൻ്റെ സമയത്തിനോടാണ് ഗ്രാറ്റിറ്റ്യൂഡ്. അത് റിയാസ് കോമുവിനോടാണ്, അത് ഒരു ആർട്ട് ഹാർബറിനോടാണ്. രണ്ടാമത്തത് എനിക്ക് ഈ പ്രോജക്റ്റുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ട് പറയാനുള്ളത്, ഇപ്പം ഞാൻ നാരായണ ഗുരുവിനെ കുറിച്ചാണ് പ്രോജക്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പം അതിൽ ഈ ഏകതാബോധം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് മനുഷ്യന് ഒരു തരത്തിൽ റിയലൈസേഷനുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവേണ്ട ഒന്നാണെന്നും ഓരോ ഇൻഡിവിജ്വലിനോടും നമ്മൾ കാണിക്കുന്ന അത് ഓരോ മനുഷ്യനും അവൻ്റെ നെഗറ്റീവ് പാർട്ടും പോസിറ്റീവ് പാർട്ടും ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പം അത് റെസ്പെക്റ്റീവ്ലി നമ്മൾ ഏറ്റെടുക്കേണ്ടത് എന്താണ്, അത് യോജിക്കാൻ പറ്റാവുന്ന തരത്തിൽ അവരെ കാണുകയും അതിനോട് ചേർന്ന് നിൽക്കുകയും ചെയ്യുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഡിഫറൻസസിലൂടെയാണ് ഈ ഒരു തരത്തിലെ ഏകതാബോധത്തിലേക്ക് മനുഷ്യൻ്റെ മെറ്റീരിയൽ ലൈഫിൽ എത്താൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ എന്നുള്ളൊരു ബോധ്യമാണ് എനിക്ക് മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി സത്യത്തിൽ തന്നിട്ടുള്ളത്, മട്ടാഞ്ചേരിയുടെ വർക്ക് തന്നിട്ടുള്ളത്. താങ്ക്സ് ടു റിയാസ് കോമു, താങ്ക് ടു ഷഹബാസ് അമൻ. എന്നെ ഇൻട്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്തത് ഷഹബാസ് ആയിരുന്നു. എനിക്ക് പിന്നീട് സുനിലിൻ്റെ കൂടെ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത് സുനിലിൻ്റെ വർക്ക് ഭയങ്കര ഒരു തരത്തിൽ ഭയങ്കര ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിംഗ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ചില തോട്ട്സ് ആണ് സുനിലിൻ്റെ വർക്കിലൂടെ എനിക്ക് കാണാൻ പറ്റിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. അത് പിന്നീട് ഓരോ സമയത്ത് കാണുമ്പോഴും അതിൻ്റെ ഡീറ്റെയിലിങ്ങിലേക്ക് ഇങ്ങനെ ചെല്ലാൻ പറ്റും. ആദ്യം കുറച്ച് കോൺഫ്ലിക്റ്റ് ആയ മൈൻഡിൽ ഞാൻ സുനിലിനോട് സംസാരിക്കുകയും പിന്നീട് എന്നിലേക്ക് തന്നെ തിരിഞ്ഞു നോക്കുമ്പോൾ അത് വളരെ ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിംഗ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സ്കെച്ചാണ് സുനിൽ ഈ മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി വർക്കിൽ ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ളത് എന്നുള്ളത് ഭയങ്കര, അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഭാഗമാകാൻ പറ്റിയതിൽ എനിക്ക് ഭയങ്കര സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്.
ഞാൻ സുനിൽ സാറിനെ പരിചയപ്പെടുന്നത് എങ്ങനെയാണെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ജോൺ എബ്രഹാമിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഓർമ്മ ദിനത്തിൽ ആളുടെ പുസ്തകങ്ങളും സിനിമകളും ഉണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ ആളെപ്പറ്റി ആരൊക്കെ എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ടെന്നുള്ളൊരു സെർച്ചിലാണ്. നെറ്റിലൊന്ന് സെർച്ച് ചെയ്ത് നോക്കിയാൽ ജോൺ എബ്രഹാമിനെ പറ്റി ആരാണ് ജോണിനെ പറ്റി എഴുതിയിരിക്കുന്നത്. കവിതയുണ്ട്, എവിടെ ജോൺ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന കവിതയുണ്ട്. അപ്പോഴാണ് സുനിൽ സാറിൻ്റെ ഒരു വർക്ക് കാണുന്നത്, സെൻറ്റ് ജോൺ എബ്രഹാം എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു ഗ്രാഫിക് നോവൽ. അപ്പം അത് തൃശ്ശൂർ ഒരു ബുക്ക് ഷോപ്പിലുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അന്ന് തന്നെ വരുത്തി അന്ന് രാത്രി തന്നെ വായിച്ച്. അപ്പോൾ അതിലൊരു ശരിക്കും ഒരു സിനിമ കാണാൻ പറ്റി എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ തന്നെ ഞാൻ സുനിൽ സാറിനെ ഇൻസ്റ്റയിൽ കോണ്ടാക്ട് ചെയ്തു, നമ്പർ കളക്ട് ചെയ്ത് സാർ വിളിച്ചായിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു ഇത് ഗ്രാഫിക് നോവലാണ്, പക്ഷെ അത് നല്ല കിടിലനായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സിനിമയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെയാണ് ഞാൻ സുനിൽ സാറായിട്ട് പരിചയപ്പെടുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ആണ് മെറ്റാഞ്ചേരി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ വർക്കുണ്ട്, അതൊന്ന് കാണണം. എനിക്കത് തിരുവനന്തപുരത്ത് വരാൻ സാധിച്ചില്ല, അപ്പോൾ വർക്ക് ആശ്ചര്യമുണ്ടായി. അപ്പോൾ വളരെ കുറഞ്ഞ വരകളും കുത്തുകൾക്കും കൊണ്ട് മട്ടാഞ്ചേരിയിലേക്ക് നമ്മളെ കൊണ്ടുപോയി എന്നുള്ളതാണ് അതിൻ്റെ. അത് ഞാൻ ഒട്ടും പ്രതീക്ഷിച്ചില്ല അങ്ങനെ. കാരണം ഞാൻ കടവന്ത്രയിൽ താമസിക്കുന്ന ഏത് ഗസ്റ്റ്, ഏത് സുഹൃത്തുക്കൾ വീട്ടിൽ വന്നാലും ഞാൻ അവരെ മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി 2 സൈറ്റ്സ് പോലെയാണ്, ഫോർട്ട് കൊച്ചി ആൻഡ് മട്ടാഞ്ചേരി. അപ്പോൾ ഇത് കാണിക്കാൻ കൊണ്ടുപോകും, മസ്റ്റാണത്. അപ്പോൾ അത് പക്ഷെ വളരെ അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഫീല് വേറെ ആയിരുന്നു. അത് അതിൻ്റെ ഒരു വർക്ക് കണ്ടപ്പോൾ വളരെ മിനിമലിസ്റ്റിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ള വരകളെ കൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ അവിടെ എത്തി എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. ആ ഒരു എന്താ പറയുക, ഇൻകംപ്ലീറ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആ ഒരു, ഇപ്പോഴും എന്തൊക്കെയോ പ്രോസസ്സുകൾ ഇങ്ങനെ നടന്നുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ് പല ലൈഫിലാണെങ്കിലും അവിടുത്തെ കൺസ്ട്രക്ഷൻ വർക്കിലാണെങ്കിലും എല്ലാറ്റിലും ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു പുതിയ. അപ്പോൾ ചരിത്രത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഭാഗമായൊരു സ്ഥലത്തേക്ക് ചില വരകളെ കൊണ്ട്, അതും സുനിൽ സാറിൻ്റെ വർക്കിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഡിഫറെൻ്റ് ടൈപ്പ് ഓഫ് വർക്ക്, ബാക്കി എല്ലാ വർക്കുകളും കാണുമ്പോഴുണ്ടാകുന്ന അതിൽ ഏറ്റവും ഇതായി തോന്നിയത് അത് സമകാലികമായിട്ടുള്ള രീതികളെ അത് ഇതാക്കുന്നു എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. പുതിയ ആൾക്കാർക്ക് മനസ്സിലാകുന്ന ഈ തൂണുകൾ അടയാളപ്പെടുത്തും അല്ലേ, തൂണുകൾ വെച്ചിട്ടാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ പറയുന്നതെന്ന് പറയുന്നത് നമ്മളെയൊക്കെ ചിന്തിപ്പിക്കുന്ന ഒരു, സത്യം പറഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മളതൊക്കെയാണ് പറയുന്നത്. ഇന്ന തൂണിലാണ് നമ്മുടെ കടവന്ത്ര വീട്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എടപ്പള്ളിയിൽ ഒരു റെസ്റ്റോറൻറ്റ് നമ്മൾ തൂണിന് നമ്പർ 763 നമ്മൾ വിളിച്ച് പറയുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അത് വലിയൊരു, നമ്മളിവിടെ തൂണുകൾക്കിടയിലാണെങ്കിൽ കൂടി നമ്മൾ അതിലൂടെയൊക്കെയുള്ള നരേഷൻ്റെ ഒരു സുഖം. ഞാൻ പിന്നീട് മിനിയേജി എന്ന് പറയുന്നൊരു ഡയറക്ടർ ഒരു സ്ഥലത്ത് വേറൊരു ആളുടെ അടുത്ത് ഈ വർക്കിനെ പറ്റി ചർച്ച ചെയ്യാണ്. ഞാനിങ്ങനെ ഒരു ക്യാമറമാൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് കേട്ടോ, മെറ്റാഞ്ചേരി എന്ന് പറയുന്ന വർക്ക് കണ്ടിരുന്നു, അതിൻ്റെ നരേഷൻ ഗംഭീര എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ് കേൾക്കുന്നിടത്തേക്കാണ് ഞാൻ എത്തുന്നത്. അപ്പം ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞു, അയ്യോ അത് ഞാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞ ദിവസം കണ്ടേ ഉള്ളൂ, സുനിൽ സാറിനെ അറിയാം, ഞാൻ നമ്പർ തരാം, അന്ന് വിളിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി അല്ലേ, അന്ന് വിളിക്കുകയുണ്ടായി. അപ്പം എനിക്കാണ് സുനിൽ സാറിൻ്റെ ശബ്ദത്തിൻ്റെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേകത, ആ ക്യാരക്ടർ ഇപ്പോഴും ആ ശബ്ദം ഇങ്ങനെ ചെവിലിങ്ങനെ നിൽക്കുന്നുണ്ടെന്നുള്ളതാണ് എനിക്ക് മനസ്സിലാകുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെ അവതരണം, ആ ശബ്ദത്തിൻ്റെ ഭയങ്കര റിയലിസ്റ്റിക് ആയിട്ടുള്ളൊരു അവതരണം. അപ്പോൾ എന്തായാലും അടിപൊളിയാവട്ടെ. എന്തായാലും പുതിയ വർക്കുകൾ കാണാൻ ഞങ്ങൾ കാത്തിരിക്കുന്നു. താങ്ക് യു സർ.
സൗണ്ടിൻ്റെ കാര്യം പറഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ സൗണ്ട് ചെയ്ത് സുബുവാണ്. സുബു ഇസ് എ പാർട്ട് ഓഫ് സുബു ഫിലിം ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂട്ട്. സുബുവും പിന്നെ അഖിൽ രണ്ടുപേരാണ് ഞങ്ങൾ 3 ടീമാണ് ബേസിക്കലി ഇതിൻ്റെ ഒരു ക്രിയേഷൻ സൈഡിലാണ് നിൽക്കുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് എനിക്ക് തോന്നി സൗണ്ട് പ്ലേസ് എ മേജർ റോൾ ഇൻ ദിസ്. കാരണം വിഷ്വലി കോണ്ടംപ്ലേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്ന സ്ഥലത്തൊക്കെ സൗണ്ട് അത് ഭയങ്കര കോമ്പിനേഷനാണ്. അപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് പലപ്പോഴും പല വർക്കിൻ്റെ പല സമയത്തും വിഷ്വലി നമ്മൾ ഇപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ അനിമേഷൻ സ്വന്തം പഠിച്ച കാരണം കൊണ്ട് ഇത് നമ്മൾ ഭയങ്കര കോമ്പിനേഷനാണ്. ഈ അനിമേഷൻ ഇല്ല, അപ്പോൾ സൗണ്ട് ഈസ് ഇൻറ്റഗ്രൽ പാർട്ട്. ആൻഡ് ദെൻ ഞങ്ങൾ ഇനിയും പ്രൊജക്റ്റ് ചെയ്യാനുള്ള പരിപാടികളുണ്ട്. സോ
just noting the kind of gratitude with which both of these artists have mentioned you, and also while looking at things over the years, the way also Sunil care and the kind of fostering that has happened, the kind of spotting of genius that you have been capable of as a curator, as a fellow artist. I don't know, I can only stop at this observation. I would like to know how you relate with all your artist colleagues as a curator, as someone who also spots and hones talent and makes a space for something like that to grow into something much larger and more significant.
I think since maybe 2010, the way I started spending like even more time on curation as such, I think there's a context to it. I mean, because I went to Bombay in 1992, the year Babri Masjid was demolished. I went there to become a textile designer, but immediately the whole context, narrative, everything changed, and then I started following. I mean, the kind of politics which you carry, especially growing up in Kerala, and I became an artist. But that story continues. So always there is this concern that speak through your work, your whatever you do, speak about the ideas of multiculturalism, diversity, the spirit of coexistence, speak about constitutional, moralities, and we also, I would say that when you walk through the period from 92 to till date, almost 33 years, this country has lived in chaos. The young generation has had tremendous trouble to kind of negotiate, even to live as an artist, to have, the spirit of freedom of expression, to tell their own stories. I would say, I think, when you look at the contemporary art today, I feel very ashamed that, there is no political argument which is coming out since last 10 years in anybody's work. Everybody is doing tropical landscapes and, like talking about colors and abstraction and personal narratives. It's been like, sealed to an extent that, you don't have any kind of freedom. So maybe what Kochi did, I'll come back to that, but in between, after forming Uru in 2016, myself, Dr. C.S. Venkateshwaran and Amrithlal, we started working together on a project called Young Subcontinent for the Serendipity Arts Festival, supported by the Munjal Foundation, and it was the initial year, 16, 17 and 18 we curated. It was amazing to travel in the subcontinent, to go to Kabul, to go to Jaffna, to go to Kilinochchi, to all these places which carries, especially the young generation, carry kind of similar kind of pain and conflict and fear, violence, constitutional disruption, war. And I think that is what taught me the way of curation or mentoring, because we had a huge funding from the project, and we used to go to villages, like still remember driving to Panjshir Valley to see Ahmad Shah Massoud, this mausoleum, like almost 200 kilometers walking through. So that kind, I don't think what I learned in Kochi was, what I learned in that 3 year, ആ ഒരു 3 വർഷത്തെ യാത്രയുടെ ഇടയിൽ നമ്മൾ പഠിച്ച ആ ഒരു what is the imprint, because they all look up to India, so because I was also seen as a kind of representative of an art institution, and you go to Jaffna, you go to Bhutan, you go to Thimphu or Kathmandu. They all knew that I'm one of the founders of the Biennale and Students Biennale and other projects, so they all wanted to be part of it. Following that, we actually made the Students Biennale a subcontinent project in Kochi. But that apart, because that's the territory we are in, because we made now almost all our neighbors our enemies, because we are in a very extreme, and especially in India, if you really look at the poor, has no place, because in Europe, you see that, the poor has a place to move around. If you are creatively inclined, you go to, the neighboring places and, flourish and, enjoy your freedom of expression. The problem with our community who does creative production, creative process, who are marginalized, our neighborhood is so poor, we don't, Indian artists fall and do, art practice, because our neighborhood is like that. Which is a reverse pattern also, that the migration happens to Indian urban spaces. So there's a different kind of a social structure we all live with. So in that context, when you look at Kerala or Kochi, today Kerala is, in an Indian context, is the site to dissent. This is where political discourse is happening, constitutional memories are retrieved, there is interesting debates, cinema is made, literature is coming out. Kerala is full of, it is thriving on cultural economy in a very different way. There's a lot of cultural projects. Our kids are playing football all across, from Kasaragod to Kanyakumari. You see how many, artificial towers we have. I'm only connected because it's also because of one of my obsessions. But we are a society which has become also alert and model in every sense. So maybe it is because of the skill we have in, because we always have this attitude of articulating and believing only in the literary traditions, which is to be contested or, also parallelly, thought through. The way the amount of art produced in recent history in the last 15 years taught people about Kerala's history, certain kind of political history, certain kind of art history, that aesthetics, ideas about design, the way you think through, communities, curate, invite, make Kochi as a kind of, the place of convergence. But beyond all things, I think the fascinating messages has passed through Kochi or the metaphors which we have used. For example, if you dig 1 meter Pattanam, it crossed 1 meter Pattanam at the excavation, symbolically speaking, you cross 1,000 meters and 1,000 years for the layering history. You dig another 2 meters, you cross 2,000 years. That's what some of the people at the site or the historians used to use as a metaphor. You dig another 1 meter, you go beyond the conflicting religions which we have. That was a fascinating metaphor. Biennale played. Biennale used that kind of a metaphors. It brought in community systems. It made Kochi, the people feel, a sense of, pride, because one of the most important contemporary art project has come and, got established, walked into the warehouses, empty warehouses, creating a new art route, following the spice route or silk route, empowered the community, got them economic prospect, future imagination, and just changed the narrative. But I, just as a kind of very important observation, because Sunil's film actually recognizes it. I don't know how many of you have noticed it. There's a lot of visuality Sunil plays. There is a girl on a swing inside Aspen Mall house. And, Sunil's that typical, I always tell him that, you are a technological version of Nambudiri Palitham, because you also come from that kind of a, history. So, and he says that, Aspen Mall is full swing. But, I don't know how many of you noticed it. There is one work which he brings into the film, which is of Alice Tager's Poets in Exile project. I'm just telling you to, to make you understand how to read art in a very different way, or how to understand, what was produced in Kochi through the Biennale. For example, if you look at, Raul Zurita's work, anyway, I'm not going into that work, but if you look at Alice Tager's Pyramid, which comes into the film, what does that work carried? Poets in Exile project. Because that when you walk through the pyramid, you hear poems which was recited by the poets in different languages. It gives you kind of a very shivering, frizzy experience. But Aspinwall House is a place which was part of the pepper which the film talks about. It was a trade hub, and cinnamon and many other spices and coir and whatever the transactions happened from British company. But pyramid historically, in many of the documents, the preservations happened inside that had used the spices has gone from Malabar. And Alice Tager bring back in the same colonial site which did the trade of pepper. And so it's a, it's a very interesting, a film of, a biennale which happens in Kerala, which invites a poet. But a poet comes and makes this massive installation like the way Rao also did. So it's also a very different kind of a conversation of coming into Kerala, where a state is dominated by a kind of literary discourses. We have a tradition to kind of believe in intangibles, and I think the way the tangible memories were brought in or made through this biennial tradition. So Sunil Nambu edits that in. We've never discussed it, but I'm saying that he beautifully edits that deeper history of, pyramids, Egypt, civilizational memories, like Mesopotamia and Muziris and, Chi and those layering, and a statement made by a poet inside Aspinwall House, So I think that's the spirit in art making, which Kochi is continuously going through. But this is one of my interest area that, how do you reread the works from 2012? Because it's continuously engaged in very fascinating conversations, and we need to actually start reading into, those kind of memories. There's a Pakistani artist's work which almost falls like rain in the work. But in the show, those are, the kind of a fall of light which shows the dust. It's almost like a kind of a very different, subtle remark of Sunil has brought in those, some of the works into the animation. So that's fascinating. So poems
from the artist, like how did you bring these things in? How did you smuggle in all these things into your, and then we'll open it up to the house. So we'll keep it short, but it'll give something to the audience too.
Yeah, when I started doing it, when it came to Biennale, then in fact I visited, in fact the first project with Riyas was like countdown series of Biennale, which 2018 we did 100 cartoons. So I was following, even though I was not present as an artist here, I was following, various events, various things, like now it's available on the, so even though it's like, then you understand how it is. And we had conversations also. In fact, a couple of times we discussed also, like these images. So I remember Riyas was telling you put pyramid, because the structure of pyramid was like, I've always, what I found is that even though Biennale happens like this year or maybe, you have past memories of Biennale, which is actually, which will haunt you, which, yeah. So, and I found, for me there was some 10 installation which then I had a discussion. So Riyas told me, and I also, pyramid as a shape also it was. So we had a conversation actually from his side, I asked him that which are the things which from your side. So yeah, then yeah, see, and other thing is that even my animations normally it is not followed from a equation like A to B, C, A, B, C, D, kind of. I do animation stage wise, and then sometimes it takes a U-turn, sometimes it goes left. So since I am the animator, I am the creator, I can, instead of going straight, it can go to left. So when you do some visual treatment, visual things, you get hooked into it. And then you work on that. So then, suddenly you get into that and then try to bring many other things. So it's a process. It's like, so it is not, sometimes it's not thought, or sometimes it's like, there's a lot of thought coming inside. So it's, yeah.
Questions from the audience, comments from the audience?
I'm not an artist, I'm a lawyer by profession. I like the presentation. I also like the panel discussion. I was just thinking of sharing an idea. As it has been already expressed during the deliberation, Mattancherry, like a miniature of Kerala in a way, to a certain extent, reflects a kind of historical harmony amalgamation of civilizations, of ways of life, religions, political thoughts. So I have been thinking, and Riyas was rightly telling about the kind of deconstitutionalization that has been happening in the field of art, which has been happening elsewhere in every field of our contemporary life in recent times. That's a serious issue. And I was thinking whether there is any possibility from the artistic point of view to present Kerala to the country, overcoming the linguistic barriers, especially in the Hindi belt, of presenting. I have been always thinking that very many intelligent creations of art and literature in the South Indian states, especially Kerala and Tamil Nadu, even Andhra Pradesh, those are not reaching the Hindi belt, where it is required to present a different, narrative of human existence and political reality. So what would be your thought on this idea of presenting Kerala, presenting Mattancherry with all its vividness and diversity to the North Indian audience, where we really face the problem of cultural fragmentation and divisive politics? This would be my question generally and very broadly.
While I listen to you, and also it's time to wind up now because there's a time limit here, I feel that we have perhaps a rather inflated view of ourselves. It's true. Superficially looking at, there's sometimes some places cannot be compared also. But right now, I think that Kerala is going through a certain kind of a tremendous crisis, where I think all the facades and all the masks are falling away. A lot of things that are not really there have been inflated and blown up and presented as if it was. And I think we have our own sets of problems, and we are also sliding back in a lot of ways. In our attitudes, in our tolerances, in a whole lot of things. So who are we to be going around presenting ourselves? This is in fact the picture of progress in which we always paint ourselves in the context of other peoples. I use the word peoples.
Maybe I'll add some positive points. What I feel is because also you related about that the site imaginaries that Matancheri and Kochi and also Muziris and the scientific temperament we have in presenting our excavation histories or excavation, whatever findings. Among the intellectuals, among the art community, whether it is in northern India or in the subcontinent or any parts of the world, I think Kochi has become a kind of a landmark. That's one reason I said that in a post-independent India, people have recognized Kochi has produced the maximum amount of international art funded by the people of Kerala. Also, many people know the struggle, the Biennale also went through. So there's a certain kind of a recognition because the resilience, the Malayali, the art community and also the political leadership has shown. I would say the best thing which most of the people who are in the world of art administration has realized, to continue the relationship, to keep, very strong emotional connection with Kochi. They keep on becoming the patrons and they are supporters, they want to become the trustee. Everybody wants to show in Kochi. It all happened because Kerala showed a model. The success of in the modern Kerala's history, the Biennale actually is the best example where Kerala again showed a model. How do you, heal a social space by using art? through cultural expressions, by excavations, by creating art, through dialogues. So I think estate became a model because the project was the best reference to the best, political will, bureaucratic wisdom, if you can call it, because Kerala is very strongly, or densely populated by bureaucratic imaginations. That's one reason our system works, in a very different way. And artistic madness. There's three components coming together, that artistic creative imaginations coming together, which was accommodated by a state, funded by the state, and we started with right arguments. We thought about building infrastructure, art infrastructure. The first infrastructural project was Darbar Hall renovation project. Now it has become a kind of a national center in every sense. Major exhibitions are happening there. Now we have one of the most important Sudhir Patwardhan's exhibition happening there. But we got beaten up for doing that. But it also got corrected immediately because there's transformations. So we also need to understand that, how much the world respects Kerala. That people believe that, this is a place to go and speak about the global crisis. This is a place that, Santiago Sierra came and spoke about capitalism. This is where Raul Zurita came and spoke about, the Alan Kurdi who was floating in the ocean. He made a stand in the same salt water, at knee length. That was the imagination of a poet. We honored him by giving Kumaranashan Prize. So next year, like Adonis was given the previous year, and the next year it was given to, Raul Zurita. So we have also gracefully recognized what Kerala is, Kerala as a state understood by people. Because we, as a society, Matancheri as a society, it is not an emblem of Kerala or India. It is actually very emblematic where the Jewish were never persecuted. We still have a Jewish synagogue. You walk towards the synagogue. Both the sides we have Kashmiri traders selling carpets. Where will you see it? And also, there is a very emblematic thing when you go towards the left. You see a black Jew synagogue which is in a demolished site. So it is also very symbolic. How do we deal with certain hierarchies? We also see that. Kochi has showed people that, how do you recycle our heritage? How do you, repurpose? That's one reason the Biennale is loved by architects of Kerala. They love it because we transformed, showed them. So I think this is very important. So I hope that, we will be able to show the major artist works in the coming years, because there is, if you observe, there is a great interest emerging among the people of Kerala who has got, that monetary strength to support creative imaginations of artists, to build new archives for the posterity. So in that sense, Kerala is continuously re-arguing and presenting our case that this is the place that, we speak of, we think about constitution and democratic discourses. That is the Kerala model, or that is the Kerala story, the real Kerala story, which helps us to kind of defend the other Kerala story, which is becoming a propaganda project. Why we didn't feel, perplexed, or why we didn't feel like, shaken up when a project like that, a propaganda project, was presented into. I still remember talking to many filmmakers and intellectuals saying that, let's watch it, so because nothing is going to change. Our integrity, our resilience will continue, because, so there's a lot of political memories and imaginations, art histories, movements which also happened from Kerala. So that also strengthens what the Biennale does. If you see the ecosystem which Kochi could trigger in the subcontinent, we need to do that cultural survey, not, or the cultural auditing to understand that, how much a project like that has created an history in India pre-biennial and post-biennial. So it's also a continuation of something which is not talked so much in Kochi, in Kerala or generally. Biennial is actually a continued imagination of Nehruvian cosmopolitanism. It carried the legacy of the triennial. India's triennial was the first triennial in the world, which also had carried that Bandung conference and those kind of non-alignment dialogues. And we were so strong as when we were taking our cultural decisions, when we were building our institutions. So we also have a very strong modernist art history where it was also part of the nation building. The second, today we are seeing Sudhir Patwardhan in Darbar Hall. He is a second generation modernist who also carried a Nehruvian, imagination, plus carrying a certain kind of a progressive communist ideologies, which was a mix of it. So we are very strong in that sense in a post, and the biennial is an extension of that. That imagination is continued, celebrated, India's diversity. So from my experience of traveling, telling the stories on curatorial narratives, meeting artists, the moment you even extend half a letter, they just, grab it to come to Kochi because they all love the way the biennial is treated. The biennial brings all kinds of people. See, the first edition of the biennial gave it a name, internationally, People's Biennial. No other biennial, even in the history of 100 years, has got that tag. And Kochi was the second longest biennial in the world in a port, and port histories, which also. So I would say, Kerala is very strong in that sense in people's imaginations, and we actually contribute a lot in triggering new imaginations of people. So I would, happy to be a Malayali.